By the way, good call on high top bands and cuffed jeans, bro.
Thanks. Yeah, solid.
Nicely done.
It's the only way, right?
It's the best way.
How long have you been in the bike industry?
A long time, since the mid-90s.
Okay.
So.
And what brands have you worked for in the past?
Most of my history has been spent around doing carbon fiber work. So I was lucky enough to start in, I guess, the late 90s with Composites in Las Vegas when we were doing some of the first carbon bike wheels back then. And then through a series of events, that company was acquired and combined with the Reynolds brand.
Okay.
And I did all the original Reynolds stuff, wheels and components and whatnot. And then left Reynolds and went and started Edge, which became ENVE. And there's a lot of people that claim to be the founder of ENVE. I'm actually the only founder. It started in my kitchen. And and then yeah, I left ENVE through not ideal terms with my financial partners, and then went to Cellar Royale and primarily focused on Crank Brothers and trying to turn Crank Brothers around. And I spent the last 7 years doing that prior to this.
Okay. So you've been all over the place.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. Well traveled.
Yeah.
Like so many people in the bike industry.
I know, right? It's like we get sucked in and trapped.
Once you're in, you can't get out.
So speaking of, do you have any advice for someone who wants to get into the bike industry?
Yeah, don't do it if you don't want to get stuck. No, it's been an incestuous industry, but at the same time, it kind of becomes our social circle, right? Like, I think that was the biggest change when I left ENVE is, you end up going to the same trade shows and the same events, and that literally becomes our social circle, whether you realize it or not. It's
right.
Like you hang with people in the bike industry all the time.
Yeah, and for the most part, they're pretty cool people.
They are fun.
Right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of why we're here. And
we build toys, dude.
Yeah. Or we talk about toys and tell stories about them. So
yeah, I mean, we're in the toy industry, the adult toy industry. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we get to play with the things we make, which is probably my favorite part.
Yeah. How old were you when you first got into the bike industry?
I was in my late 20s.
Okay.
So I had started a couple businesses outside of the bike industry and done okay with those. So I thought I was pretty clever, and then I came into the bike industry and learned that it works very differently within the bike industry. But
that it does.
We have our own nuances in this industry.
No doubt.
So.
I guess, did you go to college? You have an education? Or were you just kind of
I've been a serial entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 19. So
okay.
I like to say I have one of the most expensive educations due to some of my inability to capitalize on the profits that I've made. But yeah, no, it's school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on, man. And through that journey and bringing you here to where you're at GT, how does this sit just in that ride of the bike industry?
Yeah, I mean, when I got the phone call at the potential of coming to GT, it was super rad. Bikes for me, not to be too big of a downer, but I grew up in a super abusive household, and the one way we could get out of the house is to exercise. And so bikes for me were freedom. Like, they were wings, and I would ride all day just to be gone. And so I had a deep love of riding bikes. It was never really about competition. It was more about the freedom and the solace and the, cleaning your mental diaper.
Yeah.
And so, my relationship with bikes was that. And my very first bike that I was able to, and I had to beg, steal, and borrow to get the money for, was a GT. Like, ironically, in the early 90s was a GT. And I guess it was late 80s, actually, like 89. And yeah, I fell in love with, mountain biking and was able to get a GT. And if somebody would have came to me as a, 17-year-old kid and said, someday you'll have the chance to run GT, I would have freaked out.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of poetic and full circle, and it's brought me back to it. And I mean, if we're being honest, like, GT has seen it all. Like, it's been on top and it's been on bottom, and it's not in the best of situations right now. But the group here is super passionate. Everybody bleeds blue and yellow, and we're all very, very excited about the opportunity to bring it back to prominence. And that's what we do every day when we get to work, is focus on getting GT back to where we think it should be.
Yeah, I mean, that's very apparent. Like, all the people that I've met here, like, you can tell they're not just working here because it's a job. Like these guys are like, they're diehard GT
It's a
fans.
religion, yeah. It's a religion. And honestly, I was shocked to travel. For the last year, I've been traveling to different bike festivals and whatnot. And the one thing I would say is an absolute truth is pretty much everybody has a GT story.
Yeah.
Like if you talk to them long enough, it was their first BMX bike, it was their first whatever, and everybody's happy to share their GT story. So I spend a lot of my time listening to people's GT stories as I travel, but it's a religion. There's a lot of goodwill for the brand. People are super excited at the idea of it coming back.
Yeah.
And it's unlike some of the other companies where I worked at, where you're trying to convince people to be passionate about it. I feel like there's a huge groundswell for GT to be successful, and people are really rooting for us. So
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, it should be a good ride, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
if we can get through this really interesting time in the market.
Yeah. What are, I guess, some of the hard conversations that I guess you or GT has had to have with themselves in this kind of lull, right, in the brand history, and like how are you guys using that to change trajectory, and both from a product standpoint and from a potential buyer's vision of what GT is?
Yeah, I think for me, like when I took the job and I was, you know, I made the decision to move back to Connecticut because I felt like, you know, I knew that there was the intention to move the brand away from Canada and get it some of its own sunshine, so to speak.
California sunshine.
Yeah, apparently it was California sunshine in the end, but we didn't have a predetermined location as to where we were going to move it. I was just been told we were going to move it, and they had come up with this kind of mathematical sequence where they could identify, you know, the number of riding days and the amount of industry around it, and they kind of had this calculator to weigh the different cities, and they'd come up with a short list of about 6 cities, and so I had moved back east just so I could get to know the staff and kind of get to know the lay of the land before I ripped everybody out of their homes, and it was when I got there, I expected to find less success with the staff and whatnot, just given the reality of where GT was. And I walked into a very small group of 8 people that were extremely passionate about the brand and willing to work really, really hard and just needed an opportunity. And I think that's kind of the beauty of this acquisition, is because of the theology of the group, they really focus on brands in the lead, and what that means is each brand gets to operate in autonomy. And so, you know, being able to introduce the concept to that core group of, you're going to finally get an opportunity to act as an individual company, they were super excited about it. And we actually weighed the different locations as a group. Like, it was a group decision, it wasn't a unilateral decision. And in the end, I think everybody kind of had different wishes. Some people wanted it up in the Northwest. I wanted it up in the Rockies because that's where I'm from. But what we made as the deciding factor is what would be best for the brand. Like, aside from everybody's personal agenda, like what would be best for the brand, and we all agreed that bringing it home and back to the place where it all started and kind of where the karma's at would be best for the brand. And to be honest, it's been received that way. Like, people are super excited to see us back here. The highlight of it so far is when we got back here, we threw a kind of an open house or welcome party, but we had kind of slyly invited all of the OGs, including Gary Turner and Richard Long's families, and had a bunch of original employees and original athletes, and it ended up being just kind of a GT reunion where all of us new guys were the satellites, and we were all on the periphery, and I had spent the whole night just schlepping drinks for everybody, and it was just a beautiful reunion. Some of those people hadn't seen each other for 20 years. Wow. And so it was super emotional, and it ended up being a beautiful night, and there were a bunch of social media posts about it, but yeah, again, it goes back to that heritage, right? There's just so much history, there's so much opportunity, and getting it back here in SoCal gives us a chance to kind of attach ourselves to it in a tangible way. But most importantly, we're less than 2 miles from the trailhead. Yeah. Which we couldn't say in Connecticut.
Right, yeah.
So
what does being that close to the trails and having this opportunity to stand on their own mean for product, right? Because I imagine the product is probably something you guys got to work on.
The product has to be king, right?
Yeah.
Like, in the end, we're a product-based company. Like
Okay.
we're not a marketing company, we're not a sales company, we're a product-based company, and the product has to be dope. And so for me, like being close to the trails allows us to really lean into authenticity. The things I've done in my past, the products I've created in my past, I'm extremely proud of. Some people might see them as a little kooky or whatever, but the one thing they all have been is very authentic, and they're
Okay.
very true to their purpose and their cause and what they're trying to achieve. And for me, I think, one of the things that I've kind of challenged the team with is they were in a position before where they had to do what was good enough or what was at a price point or what, like, there were always these external measurables, and it was never about, like, can we just make the product great?
Okay.
And so we're shifting back to, like, how do we really make the product great? Like, how does the product's outcome become the most important priority rather than how are you going to fit into a portfolio at this price? It's
That's-
just essentially what they'd been doing. So,
Wow. That's crazy and awesome to hear. And I'm sure you're going to
Yeah.
take it to another step.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Like, and to be fair, like the guys that were working on the products, like they had all the things they wanted to do that they weren't able to do. And so for me, it's just more or less removing the roadblocks and obstacles and letting them really chase what they're passionate about, what they want to see happen.
Yeah. That's awesome. Now, I guess that you've been here, how long have you been
A
working?
year.
So what?
6 months in Connecticut, 6 in California.
Okay.
I like California.
Yeah, not hard to see why. No offense to Connecticut people out there.
The mountain biking's better here. So
What would you say are like some of the most exciting wins you've had so far? And like, I know you probably can't reveal what's coming down the pipe, but
I'll be perfectly honest. Like I'm super excited for the stuff that we're doing.
Okay.
That's truly what we're doing. But some of the really good wins is stuff that those guys already had in the works. Like the new sensor just launched, and it's found a really warm reception. The reviews have been great. And so that was something that they had done before I even got here.
yeah.
And then, the new Fury we've kind of soft launched the frame, and we're waiting for some embargo stuff as far as the full builds. But again, that was a product that was done before I got here. It's beautiful. Design language on the Fury, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful bikes in the industry right now.
It's pretty sick.
And yeah, I will be a sign of things to come.
Yeah.
But and then even we've got a new grade that we're going to be launching here in the next little bit, but it's kind of soft launched around the world, which is part of the whole COVID backlash with the supply chain being jacked up. But
Right.
And again, the GT was one of the first major brand to get behind gravel. They say they were the first gravel bike. I don't agree with that. I was making a lot of tubes for custom builders, and there were a lot of custom built gravel bikes rolling around before GT did theirs, but they were the first mass produced gravel bike.
Okay.
And so what they've put together for this next generation is really honoring kind of that commitment to gravel, and I'm super thrilled about that bike too. So there's been some good wins that I feel like are kind of coming to fruition right now that are like available to the public now, and then I know there's just going to be a lot of good stuff to follow.
Yeah.
So.
And then as far as like goals for changing image perception, like kind of bringing that like rock and roll like edge that GT had years and years ago, is that something that's on your radar, or
100%.
are you kind of just at the like we're letting the product speak moving forward kind of?
Well, I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Right.
Like, the product has to be rock and roll. The brand's going to be rock and roll. But I think for me, one of the major levers that the team had to pull when they were part of that larger conglomerate was to lean on heritage a lot. And they told the story of the history, and GT has a phenomenal history, man. And the basis of what made GT the best in the 90s is the innovation. Like they were breaking the mold all the time with new products and new ideas. And so I feel like part of us honoring what GT is getting back to breaking the mold a little bit and kind of testing the norm. But there's also a part of it where I feel like this provides us an opportunity to stop always looking backward and start looking forward at what GT could be, like what the next chapter of the story is. And for me, I think kind of where it's at and where the market's at is it's the raw rock and roll part of GT that was super rad still needs to be an influence, but there also needs to be a part where it matures and evolves into to where the market is and where it's going. And so we'll be doing some stuff as far as brand refresh and brand redo. You know, they just celebrated their 50th anniversary, and they had a lot of fun with that. And they did their commemorative collection stuff, and they did their 50-year birthday tour, and had a lot of fun with that. But we'll be launching a new kind of branding at the end of this year, and it will be kind of the direction of where we're going. And the way I would describe it is it's kind of the refinement of GT becoming sophisticated.
Okay.
And sexy.
Right on.
So,
and GT, there's a new logo on bikes, right? Can we talk about who came up with that? And the
so
reason?
that was something that was done, I think, centered mostly around the 50th, and the marketing team and whatnot. Again, it was something that was in the works before I got here, but they had looked back at all the different logos and everything that GT's done, and they were looking at something that could unify kind of everything and kind of celebrate what all those logos were and give them just kind of a one logo stamp. And so that logo will live on the 50th generation bikes. Basically, it's a 1-year capsule logo.
Okay.
We'll be returning to the original race logo of the the capitalized G and T that everybody knows. That logo might continue on in some of the BMX applications because it's so much closer to what the BMX logo was.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we're kind of a multilingual brand.
Yeah.
And that's important to me that we start to honor, as somebody that grew up BMXing and skating and then kind of got older and got into mountain biking, they're different cultures, and I think it's important that we at GT honor those cultures separately.
Yeah, you can't put one stamp on everything and
man.
want everybody to like it.
To be fair, most mountain bikers who are BMXers or would still love the BMX thing, but I know a lot of BMXers that don't want anything to do with mountain bikers. So I think you got to be respectful to their spaces.
Right. Okay. So what was your first GT?
It was a Team Avalanche. I think it's the official model was a Team Avalanche, but it was the white one with black tiger stripes, which at my age now, I kind of question why that was attractive to me. But but the 80s were full of a lot of weird finishes. But yeah, to date myself, it didn't come with a front shock. It came with a rigid fork.
Okay. Do you still have it or have one?
I wish I did. That's one of the things where I'm at now. I wish I would have hung on to all my bikes because I've had some really unique bikes through the years, especially with all the custom builders I worked with. But I as so many people do in the bike industry, you roll one over to get the next,
Yeah.
But
So something I've been asking a lot of the crew here is if you could have one GT from any era that stands out to you, what would that be as a wall piece?
the first bike we launched in 25.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm really excited about where we're going.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, I don't know. I think the Lobo is kind of cool for me as a composite guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like those early composite attempts at doing composites well. Like GT was way out front. And honestly, if I was looking for straight wall piece, which isn't a mountain bike thing, but I would love to have one of those thermoplastic Olympic bikes. That was so like UFO, for the time being, and just a really, it was kind of just a flex. It was an engineering flex of where GT was at and what they were willing to accomplish, and so I think that's kind of a cool bike too.
Okay.
But,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, you and I are the same. Then I picked the Lobo with that red and white boxer.
Yeah.
That thing was sweet, man.
And all the billet junctions, and it was just a cool accomplishment.
Yeah, I think I was like 16 years old working at a bike shop, and they had one hanging up just out of my reach, financially and physically. And I was like, dude, that bike is bad. But they go for a lot of money these days.
Yeah, and they get people. We went to the Malverns Festival in the UK, which I wasn't familiar with before being here, and it basically is like a GT reunion.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was amazing to see the number of people that had just mint condition, mid 80s to early 2000s GTs, and they all are super passionate and want to talk about them, and it was really cool. It was a cool event to see. Highly recommend it if you ever get an itch to go to a UK bike festival. But yeah, it was a super good time.
Right on. Awesome, man. Well, thank you. Appreciate it, and exciting to see what comes in the future. So thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks for coming and hanging out.
Absolutely. All right.